Great, you guys. Thanks so much for joining the panel today. I know we're coming up on lunchtime here, so I wanted to kick it off with the best way to eat a Bitcoin. I've been thinking about that all morning, 1 megabyte at a time, you guys. So, with that being said, we've got an exciting one here today. It's called The Future of Bitcoin Mining Hash Wars 101. Basically, decentralized versus centralized mining. So, we've got 7 of the top industry experts here. I'll introduce them in order. The first one, Asher Genoot. He's the CEO of Hut 8 and actually works with us quite closely on the platform. Asher, come on up.
All right.
Oh, I was going in that way.
Jolie, Scott. Get both.
All right, Chris. I'm not seeing enough space for all of us.
There you go.
Awesome.
Awesome, you guys. So welcome. We've got a big panel here today. Hopefully get some back and forth going. It's a pretty controversial topic, centralized versus decentralized mining, fairly opinionated. Before we get into it, though, I wanted to do a quick introduction on the panel. Asher, maybe we'll start down at your end here. If you can just tell us who you are, what company you represent, and what it's all about.
Hey everybody, my name's Asher Genoot. I'm the CEO of Hut 8. We are a large-scale energy infrastructure platform. We're a large-scale miner primarily in the US and Canada. And then we also have a big footprint in Canada, 5 data centers that we have today, and then building a big footprint on the AI data centers in the US. So anything that touches energy infrastructure, primarily in Bitcoin mining and traditional data center infrastructure.
Awesome. Scott, maybe we'll just pass the microphone down to you and keep going.
I'm Scott Johnson, CEO of Digital Shovel. We are a infrastructure manufacturer of pretty much everything except for the Bitcoin miner itself. So we do ventilation systems, switchgear, power distribution systems. We've got them all on display at our booth. We'd love you to check it out.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jolie Kahn. I'm the CEO of AgriFORCE Growing Systems. We are new to the industry. We are a Bitcoin miner. We are mining Bitcoin in Ohio and Alberta right now. With a unique twist, we're also co-locating modular agriculture.
Okay. Hello, I'm Bitcoin mechanic. I work at Ocean. We're decentralizing template construction and ultimately pretty much everything about the software side of mining.
Hello, my name is Ben Smith. I'm the president of the Arkansas Blockchain Council. We also have a company called Block Ops and Block Strategies. We self-mine about 250 megawatts here in the state, and I'm here to represent our state's miners as a whole.
Hey everyone, Augustine here with Demand Pool, first Strategy 2 pool out there using free open source software to decentralize block template creation. Yeah, just happy to be here and talk about centralization versus decentralization.
Right on. So thanks so much for the introduction. Maybe we'll keep the mic with you down there, Kenobi, at the end. Wanted to talk about the current balance between centralized, decentralized Bitcoin mining and where you see that going over the next few years.
Well, I think we're right now either reaching the peak or past the peak of centralization. I think the industry is waking up, the community is waking up and realizing that we need to decentralize at all levels of the stack. We're seeing it with things like Auradine or Epic. They're creating new chips, new chip designs in the US, potentially also starting to manufacture the chips also in the US. And we also see it now with people moving outside of the US. It used to be China, that used to be the main point of hash rate production, let's say, or block production, and now it's the US, but now we're starting to see also like Africa show up, Latin America show up, and then moving up the stack, we see that on pools. We also have guys like Ocean or ourselves using different technology to decentralize how blocks get created and who decides which blocks are, like which blocks, how they look. So I think we are right past the peak or reaching the peak of centralization, and we're slowly moving away from that as time goes on.
I was hoping you'd say that. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, Asher, you guys are a large pubco miner, more on the centralized side of things. What would you respond to saying we've kind of peaked in terms of centralized mining and now it's shifting towards decentralized?
So I may have a little bit of a contrarian opinion to what you guys think I would say, but I think for us, really what we care most about is kind of building the digital infrastructure, kind of the energy infrastructure that powers this compute. And so we have a big self-mining business, but we also actually manage hundreds of megawatts of miners for other people as well. And so for us as a company, I think we're more focused on kind of the power and the digital infrastructure we're building. And we are not as focused on we have to be the consumer of that compute. We have to own the ASIC chip ourselves. And so at the end of the day, I do believe there's massive economies of scale when you build larger facilities, whether it be in build costs, operations, and or energy management. And if we're able to do so, but we can have a decentralized client base that actually owns the computing, decide how to vote and how to participate in the network, I think we're fine with that. We just want to be on the underlying infrastructure layer.
That's great. Now, I'm curious, Bitcoin mechanic, get the ocean opinion on this one. Where do you feel like we are in terms of the centralized, decentralized equilibrium right now?
Well, we're sort of at the bottom coming out of the trough. We're in the trajectory is really good because Ocean is growing faster than the network difficulty. So Ocean's around 6 exahash at the moment. So and if you compare that the last 365 days or something of growth, we've definitely outpaced network difficulty, which is really good. That shows a trend towards miners creating their own blocks, which they should be doing because there's plenty of incentive for them to do it. Part of the sort of lucky combination of circumstances means that miners that aren't prepared to help decentralize the network are also not making as much money as they might. So in all things classic to Bitcoin, if you do the right thing, you end up making more money as well. It's not just a play to altruism. So miners have shown a lot of a lot of interest in making their own templates and helping decentralize that aspect of Bitcoin, which obviously is where censorship resistance actually comes from, is you have to have miners doing all of what mining is, not just the hashing part. They need to be deciding what they're hashing and not just giving that to Foundry and Bitmain. So, yeah, as I said, Ocean's growing. Ocean's a very small pool still, but there are plenty of pretty big miners on it that have around an exahash, and you'll see them find a couple of blocks a week that are Ocean blocks, but they're called Electron Energy or they're called Penguin. Or, what were some of the other ones we had this week? There was a couple of solo mined blocks, right? And this is solo mining, which doesn't mean, I got all the reward out of the block, because miners should split rewards. That's a great way for them to operate. What it means is they created the block themselves, they broadcast it to the network themselves. And as long as miners are doing that and pools are doing what Ocean does, which is as little as possible, then that's the way you decrease centralization in the network. You make it so that the coordinators do as little as possible, so that if someone came and put a gun to our head and coerced us to do bad things, there wouldn't be a lot they could really get us to do.
Fair enough. And hopefully that doesn't happen. Now, you just mentioned economies of scale, Asher. So the next portion here talks about some of the key advantages, disadvantages of centralized versus decentralized mining. You think about security, scalability, economies of scale. Scott, maybe you can kick this one off. What side of the fence are you on here? Do you think there's more advantage, large scale mining or decentralized mining?
We try to, when we build our infrastructure, stay agnostic. I kind of am for both situations. I can see where a large pubco, obviously, if I was in those shoes, I would probably very much more be on the centralized side of it. However, as a smaller independent miner, I mean, I'd rather lottery mine it. If you got shitty power prices, it's more in your incentive to do that. We're trying to make that a lot easier. We're announcing today a relationship with Ocean where we're going to be integrating one of their datum boxes into all of our pods, so people on a smaller scale or even a larger scale are able to easily operate their own node. Which, like, I'm in Ontario. My power price is 9 cents, 10 cents US. If you're running older generation equipment, you're way better incentivized to lottery mine rather than sit right on the edge of the bubble of losing money or making money by a few cents. I'd rather do that lottery aspect of it and help things stay decentralized.
That's great. Now, Jolie, I don't know a ton about AgriFORCE, but can you tell us how you guys fit into this and which side of the centralized, decentralized equation you're on?
Sure. How we fit into this is we are picking up small individual sites to mine. So we are very much in favor of decentralized mining. We feel that going after the smaller sites where we can take advantage of lower priced power, for instance, stranded natural gas is the way to go. Obviously, at some point, these sites do aggregate, but there are also security advantages. If you don't have everything all in one site, it's a lot easier to manage risks with downtime and security risks, etc. So we believe that decentralized mining is the way to go. Obviously, once you hit a critical mass, that becomes impossible to manage. So I can see for the bigger miners why it's more advantageous to be a large centralized miner. But from where we sit, energy costs are lower. It allows us to do unique things like co-locating the agricultural assets in containers. We're doing a pilot project with that in our mining facility in Ohio. Very exciting. Another aspect that helps generate revenue and also helps grow different types of products that may not otherwise grow in certain climates. So we're very excited about the decentralized aspect.
Yeah, great response. And Ben, from your opinion, blockchain council, where do you stand on this issue?
Yeah, so as a self miner, I lean towards the size of decentralization, of course. But over the last year, our industry has been very happy about our government coming into our industry. And, the saying is that even if you don't take interest in the government, they're going to take interest in you, right? So our viewpoint as the council in our state to work with legislators to give favorable legislation to our state. We were the first one to pass the right to mine bill a couple of years ago, and that falls on the side of the centralized mining aspect of that. So as the industry grows, we feel that we're going to have to be more and more centralized. It's just the nature of the beast and the growth. Unfortunately, that goes against Satoshi's vision and of Bitcoin. So hopefully, with guys with their pools, we can at the pool side we can be the decentralized version of ourselves, but also be the centralized version of ourselves by working with our government, being pro American or whatever pro country you're in, and really work to be a good actor in your community and be a part of your community because we get such a bad rap throughout the country as miners, and we really need to focus on that aspect of our industry.
Definitely. Now, Scott, this one's going to be for you. You just talked in your presentation keynote about how it used to be people would weld out the sea cans themselves. You guys have obviously invested a lot in building the infrastructure, the technology. How has that supported decentralized self mining, allowing people to have access to that kind of stuff that maybe they didn't a few years ago?
It's definitely. Whether we're talking about mining decentralization, I guess I'm getting a little confused as to whether we're focusing on the physical element of it, where we're decentralizing where the mining is actually based versus the hash rate all being centralized into one pool. If we're talking about the physical element, I like to think it helps quite a bit. Traditionally, a lot of the solution providers were doing 20, 40 foot large containers, and we started with that as well. Not everybody wants to do that. Using products like our nanopod or our mini pod, which are between 100 to 300 kW, and some of them operate on single phase power, you can go and find an extremely small natural gas well, or even hook it up in a farm or a small industrial unit. Even we have some people even hooking them up in their house. A YouTuber Voscoin's got two of them going down there and putting them on single phase power because he's on a farm. That's all he can do. He's capped out on that single phase, and it opens up more opportunity for more smaller operations to do it in a non-cost prohibitive manner. A lot of people really underestimate how expensive it is to get started in this. If you haven't done it, forget the hardware side, just your electrical bills. If you don't have the economies of scale, like some of the larger publicly traded or more organized companies do, they know when they're getting gouged. The smaller guy doesn't, and the electrician doesn't want to come and hook up or build this smaller mining shed for you and spend all these hours doing customization. We provide that in one holistic solution, easy to transport and easy to turn on.
Now, in terms of demand for the mini pod, you said you have a lot of different use cases. Are you seeing overwhelming demand across the US? Is it one specific sector or type of client?
It's across the board. We've deployed over 1,600 of the mini pods at about 300 kilowatts per piece. the majority of it goes to the US. However, we have units in Finland, we have units in Australia. We just shipped a unit to Korea, and the unit can actually be bolted together, kind of like a very elaborate IKEA set. We did BTC Prague last year, and we actually airshipped a container in pieces and assembled it on the floor. We have multiple units across Africa as well, and drawing or condensing that unit down into a small box allows you to push it to more remote locations with conventional shipping methods, rather than needing to use, putting your unit on top of another shipping container on the top of the ship, which is extremely cost prohibitive, or putting it on a tractor trailer with a wide load. Our units could all fit in most conventional shipping methods.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, Asher, they just cited one of the benefits Decentralized is able to find those pockets of stranded low cost energy. I know Hut 8, you guys have one of the best energy prices in the industry. We talk about technological innovation. Obviously, you guys have built out for AI, HPC, and Bitcoin mining. What would your response to that be? How has technology supported the centralized mining?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to kind of mine myself personally, finding kind of small pockets where I had a couple hundred kilowatts, a megawatt, 2 megawatts, I mean, that's a great business, right? If I could find cheap power, I think for Hut 8, like, honestly, anything under 100 megawatts just doesn't move the needle for us for what we need to deliver to our shareholders. And so for us, like, over time, that metric has grown and grown, and we've had to adjust and change our strategy on how do we find low cost power. And so we went from finding smaller sites that we could drive low cost power to ultimately where we've landed today is actually working with power generating generators and working with actual power plants to say, all right, your power is congestion for X, Y, and Z reason. A lot of renewable, for example, in West Texas has congestion because there's not enough transmission to support that power generation. And so we actually build large scale Bitcoin mining data centers at the source of generation. So we have a 280 megawatt plant with NextEra at one of their wind farms that's interconnected to the grid. We have another 205 megawatt plant with Northleaf that we built at their wind farm. And so for us, it's evolved to let's work with power generation, figure out where there's a supply and demand mismatch, and where this specific load profile can come and solve a problem, and as a result, help us get really low cost power.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously helps the local communities. Now, this is going to the pool guys over there. One of the big concerns, and in Satoshi's original vision, obviously decentralized, the pools have really consolidated, and that seems to almost be the bottleneck in the industry. I know Ocean and obviously DMND, you guys are trying to change that. Can you talk to us about pool technology and why we kind of got in this situation we're in now?
I think, like, looking at the name of the panel here, you have basically two facets or two jurisdictions in Bitcoin. I call it hodl culture and mining culture. So hodl culture basically is predicated on all these self-sovereign values, like not your keys, not your coins. And the purpose of that is if you let a third party take hold of your coins for you, you will probably get them robbed at some point. So you need to just assume that you need to take responsibility for your own money. Otherwise, you don't have any money. That's why it's not your keys, not your coins. So that's ultimately where the incentive comes from, and that reinforces the network as a whole because people have to run nodes to verify that they have the coins they think they do. And that's what enforces the rules in a decentralized capacity. So that's great. Mining has the same self-reinforcing structure, but it's taken a while for people to stop fucking around and actually stop getting themselves in trouble. So miners have handed off a lot of sovereignty to centralized third parties. There's a bunch of reasons for that, and a lot of it, thankfully, is just sloppiness and not really doing the maths and realizing how much money they're losing doing that. So when anyone's prepared to do some calculations and analysis, they can say, hey, I can do what's good for Bitcoin. I can help decentralize it and make more money. That pretty much ties everything back together again. There's no self-sacrifice or appeal to altruism that's necessary to help miners do what helps Bitcoin and move away from all the centralized third parties. Ocean launched way back now in November 2023. And we've had enough people doing case studies. If you go on Ocean XYZ, you'll see testimony after testimony after testimony of very well-respected miners who've said, I've been mining with Ocean for months. I've earned a lot more money doing it. The claims have been out there. All our payout information is public. We make claims to pay more than FPPS pools. Some people have said, I don't believe you. But at the end of the day, we're making comparisons using our public payout data versus pools that don't want to tell anyone anything. And a couple of them have said, no way you guys pay that much more. And then they just sort of disappear into the woodwork and never come back. So we've had a couple of CEOs of FPPS pools say, you guys don't pay out that much more. I'm going to prove it. And then just never do so. Because ultimately, we pay out based on a public payout basis. Every single payout on Ocean is public information for everyone to see. We would be absolutely crazy to make any sort of disingenuous claims around how much we pay out. So everything we say is verifiable. And if you don't mine on Ocean at the moment, you can find someone that does, that has a similar hash rate to you or a similar uptime to you, and do a comparison. And within a very short time frame, there's a lot of noise. But if you expand out to 90 days or 1/4 or an entire year now, typically we've just been not just a little bit better, but way better. And to round off this whole point, because the reason miners want to mine in a pool in the first place is to reduce variance. But the dominant model is FPPS, which is like, swatting a fly with a nuclear bomb. It's a very, very over-the-top approach to do anything. You don't need to get paid as a miner on a second-by-second basis. You don't need to get paid for every single share. That's overkill, and it's very, very expensive. My favorite analogy for it really is just like it's buying a car insurance policy that says, hey, if a rock flings up off the highway and chips my windscreen, I want a brand new Ferrari in my driveway tomorrow morning. That product can exist if you want, but it's going to be very expensive and it's not appropriate. You need something a bit more reasonable, and then it's going to be a bit more affordable. So Ocean is a more old school kind of pool in that way. It just says, look, you split rewards with other miners, right? You've got an exahash, you've got an exahash, you've got an exahash. Let's combine efforts, and then you'll get paid 3 times more often and 1/3 of the amount. That's enough. And it's a much, much cheaper product than FPPS, where the pool takes on all variants and on a minute-by-minute basis will pay you. So that's the premise of it. That's why decentralized mining should win if miners are being economically rational. And we're seeing, as I said at the beginning, we're seeing a migration towards this and away from FPPS. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, from demand pool. We have the name shortened, but it's demand, like demand and supply. And if you look at the back of our shirts, it says demand decentralization, because that's what we're looking for. And going back to the question about like the technology, I think especially in the pool business, there's 2 main prongs of centralization. One is the technology and one is the finance. Mechanic touched upon both of them. And it's quite interesting. I'll quickly go through the history of why the technology was like that. And it's basically in 2011, pools were created because nobody thought that, hey, we would need ever to have pools integrated in Bitcoin. So somebody had to figure it out in their mom's basement, so to speak. In this case, it was Slush. And he just kind of did a good enough job. And it was actually good enough. But in his production, or in his like choosing how the system worked, by mistake or by deliberate choice, he decided to give the block template generation, so who creates the block, who's actually the miner, to the pool. And nobody cared for the next 8 years until we had the block size wars and people realized, oh, that could be problematic. If someone builds most of the miners, someone also controls the pool, they can actually do very easily an attack on Bitcoin, because they would have not only the ASICs, but also the control of who builds the blocks through the block template generation from the pool side. And that's when we had Matt Corallo come out with Better Hash. That's what invigorated the community to create Stratum V2, which ended up leading to now having 2 pools that are decentralized and helping miners create their own blocks. But that's only one prong, right? That's one vector of centralization that we're trying to solve. The other one, as Mechanics said, is the fact that miners have gotten like in reverse Indiana Jones, so to speak. At the beginning of the first movie, they have the gold thing, the gold like statue, and he switches it for sand, a bag of sand. Well, that's kind of what happened to them, because we pools were only supposed to be payment providers, not insurance providers. And for the past 6, 7, 8 years, pools have become insurance providers, because FPPS is not a payment system, it's an insurance system. And insurances, they have a shit ton of capital that they need in order to not go bankrupt. And huge amounts of capital have huge capital costs. That's what we see, that all of these FPPS pools, they don't want to be transparent, because if they're transparent, you quickly realize that you make less money. That's why on our end, we're doing Stratum V2 to decentralize the technological vector of centralization, but then also Slice, so an advanced PPLNS method to properly distribute the payments. And that's how we're tackling this. And as Mechanic said, it's a for once, as with Bitcoin, it's very interesting to see that being on the good side of history, being on the good side of, decentralization, not your keys, not your money, not your coins, is actually financially profitable, right? That's one of the things that has made Bitcoin so popular and so easy to adapt. It's because it says, hey, you can make more money while also fighting for decentralization, right? That is like, who doesn't want that? Usually it costs money to fight for the good things. For once, it makes you money, or at least it doesn't lose you money. Let's put it that way, right? With decentralized pool technology, so to speak, both the payment part and the technology part, that's what you're getting. You're getting more money, more power, back to you, so to speak, and you're decentralizing the network, bringing back what Satoshi Nakamoto wanted for Bitcoin.
A real win-win. Now we're going to move into strategy. Ben, I saw you take the mic there. Do you have a comment on that one as well?
Yeah, I would like to just speak to the fact of the vision is great, but we're all here because of there was liquidity put into our network, right? And as the global liquidity goes up, the Bitcoin price goes up. There's pretty clear correlation with that. And somebody like Mr. Asher down there has, like he said, he's beholden to shareholders, and he has to do what's right and put forth a roadmap and show how they're going to make more money, make more Bitcoin, make more of their product to their commodity. Well, as a business owner, we have to do the same. Whereas, I haven't done my research properly on the decentralized pools, ocean, and in demand properly, but we have if we have investors that come in, they want to know what their return is going to be. And when we are forecasting returns, it's hard to say, oh, well, maybe this will be where it's at, or maybe this will be at. So as a, contrarian to the decentralized pool section to our more centralized, as we're saying, or the full pay per share model, I think that gives investors more incentive to put that liquidity and capital into our industry and get into sections like doing things that we're doing right now. We wouldn't be here without it. So there has to be some balance and vision and compromise between the two, I think, and that's where my vision and thoughts are on that. So
Great.
If I may quickly answer you, first of all, very valid concern. And the good stuff about what we're doing is that, yes, at the beginning, if you're a small pool, the variance, it like brings a lot of, let's say, uncertainty. But the moment you become bigger than 1%, 2% of the network as a pool, as a PPLNS, so or advanced PPLNS, in our case, Slice, you actually act like effectively from a payment perspective. You act as an FPPS pool minus all of the costs of an FPPS pool. So that's what we're trying to do with demand, right? We're trying to provide that quality, all of the FPPS quality, all of the things that investors look for, right? But without all of the costs, and also being much more transparent, right? Because these guys, yeah, they're telling you, hey, this is what we're giving you, but don't look into the fees. Like Mechanic always uses this example, and we like to also use it. It's the going to the airport and saying, hey, look, there's a 0% currency exchange. They have 0% fee. Then you look under the hood and it's like, oh, wow, I got like 20% less than what I should have, right? Exchanges do the same, right, with the spreads. So that's something to be addressed as well, right? Everything has a cost, and insurance is expensive. Go ahead, Mechanic.
There's a lot of context for this stuff. So, I say the context is really important, but there actually isn't much, but people are going off of a couple of case studies. So, I mean, did anyone follow the sort of history that happened with Brains Pool and Riot leaving them and writing this blog post around how they made a lot less than they expected? Did anyone that was kind of a watershed moment in mining, because everyone was like, that's it, PPLNS sucks. Brains was using a derivative of PPLNS called Score, which was absolute garbage. I can't be bothered to mince words about it. It just... If you were a miner that would turn off and on, it would penalize you in a way that was just a result of it not being implemented properly. This gave PPLNS a really bad name, and Brains, right after Ocean launched, pivoted to FPPS. And this was kind of validating, because during Ocean's pre-launch period, everyone was like, if this is such a good idea, isn't everyone going to copy you? And we said, no, I bet they all double down and go mega FPPS, super turbo FPPS. And all this means it's a free lunch analogy, because PPLNS, in theory, from a miner's perspective, they look at it and go, all right, well, if the pool doesn't know what they're doing, then I just don't get paid. Whereas in FPPS, it's the pool's problem because they will pay you no matter what happens. So if they don't know what they're doing, as long as you're submitting shares, you're going to get paid. But it's Bitcoin. If blocks are not getting found, those Bitcoins do not exist. And anyone promising to pay you on that basis, coins that don't exist, they're going to have to take a big enough cut for themselves, and they're going to have sufficiently deep pockets to be able to weather any storm. And that's not just variance. That's attacks. That's and that is just poor implementation of the pool. Things like empty block speedup that appear like incompetence, but are the very opposite. There's a reason pools do that. There's a reason you see roughly one empty block on the network a day. It's because that's how you minimize your miners' downtime, is you make sure you get them work immediately after every network block. You send them an empty block to work on, because that's how you get them mining as quickly as possible. Pools that don't do the empty block speedup, like Foundry, strangely enough, are just wasting their miners' electricity every 10 minutes. They have their miners mining stale work for longer because they're sending a full template, which just straight up takes longer to get to the miners. So there's a reason these things work the way they do. And my central point here is that FPPS, the pool has to absorb all of these design decisions and mistakes and attacks and bad luck. And ultimately, it's only ever going to be the miner that pays that bill. So there was this illusion after Riot left Brains and went to an FPPS pool. Everyone said, well, if you use PPLNS, bad luck and everything else is the miner's problem. If you use FPPS, bad luck and everything else is the pool's problem. But if it's the pool's problem, it's still the miner's problem. You're never going to escape that fact. It just gets obfuscated and hidden inside the stuff you alluded to, about me always alluding to, which is the airport currency exchange. It says 0%, it's 20% below market rate, right? So Bob from Barefoot, his 1 year numbers having mined with Ocean was he got 30% more than the best FPPS pool he compared to, and like 35% more than the worst FPPS pool he compared to. First point, FPPS is meant to pay the same no matter what pool you mine with. That's clearly not true. Second pool, that it shouldn't have been anything like that discrepancy. Granted, some of that was the nature of launching an FPPS pool. You do have a better run of it at the very beginning because PPLNS ramps up and then ramps down, except for when you launch, you just start already ramped up. So everyone that joins after that makes you earn a little bit more than you'd otherwise expect. But we only found 5 blocks instead of 8 during our launch, which canceled out all of that, which meant we should have been on par. We should have been a couple of percent better. You know, we charged 0% at that period. Now we don't charge 0%. We charge fees. But we were just way better than we should have been. And that continues to be the case. And I forget even what my original point was with this whole spiel. So thank you.
Just to follow up to Ben's point, though, on the investors not wanting to invest if you've got that variability, dude, they're invested in Bitcoin mining. Like, we've got variability built into the industry. Like, not everybody. Some are going to be a little less risk adverse and on hedging strategies and stuff like that. But to say that people, or you're not going to be able to pull in investors on that, I think if they're adventurous enough to be into the Bitcoin mining industry, they probably got a decent appetite for risk and welcome something that's not only going to be good for the industry, but also potentially make them some more money
For their pockets, yeah.
I'll add a little bit to that. When I think about the Bitcoin mining ecosystem, I actually break it out into the layers of investment. Because if you think about a casino, if you're investing in the underlying real estate, you're not taking probability risk in the slot tables or in the roulette table. So I think about mining. If you're investing in the land, if you're investing in the data center, you don't necessarily have to take ASIC and risk and hash price risk. Then if you're investing in the ASIC chip itself, it depends really what your risk profile is, right? Like, if you ask me, if hash price forward derivatives were a real thing and there was enough market depth and we can lock in revenues and lock in energy rates, like, I would do that all day, every day, because every time we spend $1 on ASICs, we'd be able to lock in our return, and you're not taking that bet. On the other hand, if what we were telling investors is you're coming in and you get a levered play on Bitcoin, if this works, you're going to make a shit ton of money. And if it doesn't, you might lose money. Like, every company, I don't think, is made equal, where investors have different risk profiles, which ultimately affects your cost of capital of the capital you raise. And so I agree that the example that was made, like when you go and you think it's 0%, it's not really 0%. So I agree with that. We actually run analyses on all of the pools that we have. And even if we don't use pools, we have a couple of machines. So just so we can compare on a payout basis on a monthly basis. And maybe we should try that with Ocean as well. We can talk afterwards. But I think we just like to keep accountability on what does that look like and what is kind of the variance volatility look like in the given month or over a period of time. But ultimately, like every company is investing with a different expectation, and that should correlate with the kind of cost that they're investing into, right? And so an example is if I own 100 miners and I just want to hit the lottery and hit a block, and I would rather go, like, that's one profile of investors, and that's what you would tell them is, look, we might get nothing for a period of time, but if we hit it, we'll hit it big, and that's what you're getting into. Versus, like, for us right now, we're deploying hundreds of millions of dollars of ASICs. That's not what we're telling our investors, and we're trying to underwrite where do we think difficulty will go, which ultimately is driven in my mind by how many wafers are being produced, what is a manufacturing pipeline, and that's how we think about kind of the variance curve, and also what's the average cost of electricity in terms of competing with us. And so I think all of these are fair and merited, and it's ultimately what is the goal of whoever's putting up a dollar and what are they looking for, and then that determines kind of the risk you're able to take.
Yeah, great discussion, guys. Going to go to another contentious topic right now, politics. So this has been a big year for Bitcoin. We've seen policy, a lot of new things introduced in terms of strategic Bitcoin reserve and federal and state level. Again, from the centralized, decentralized perspective, I'm curious to get your thoughts again, Asher, actually. As one of the central players, maybe you had some headwinds against your company in prior years. It seems like a lot more collaboration now with government and policymakers.
Yeah, look, I think we're in a great era today. We have a very supportive and friendly administration who obviously cares about crypto and is a part of kind of their core pillars. And so as we think about kind of our business, whether it be crypto, Bitcoin, energy, AI, I mean, this is the time, I feel like, both in America and globally, to really double down and build and scale infrastructure. And so from our perspective, like a big catalyst that we foresee is large scale banking institutions, financial institutions, continued adoption, because there'll be more regulatory clarity. And ultimately, I think that will create even more adoption than has existed in a way where people feel comfortable and large scale financial institutions are willing to work with this industry and working to support it. And if you have companies like Charles Schwab, for example, open up the ability to purchase Bitcoin, a part of all of these kind of retirement plans and so forth, you unlock a whole new category of capital investor bases. And I think this administration has kind of indicated a willingness and a support to their ecosystem, including with kind of what David Sachs is doing.
That's great. Now, Scott, in your presentation, you talked to... Oh, go ahead, Jolie.
I just wanted to dovetail on to what Asher said. This is also very important at the state level. Various states, including specifically Ohio, are now passing legislation where they're going to be holding Bitcoin as part of their treasury. This, bringing it into the mainstream, legitimizing it, making it part of our national and state level capital structure, is also helping the industry.
Scott, that was great. My question for you, Scott, was going to be in relation to the manufacturing. You talked about your new facility. We've heard a lot about tariffs impacting global trade. How do you feel that's going to impact your business moving forward as you support these miners, whether they're centralized or decentralized?
Well, I guess Trump's getting his way because we're putting a facility in the U.S. We were planning to do that anyways. It's cheaper for, even if we do like the raw metal processing and then do final assembly. 80 to 90% of our clients are usually in Texas anyways. So I'm reducing my shipping by almost 70% by sending it down there unassembled. And then we're able to deliver it to customers faster. So we were planning to do that anyways. For now, we're not doing any of the actual, the heavy lifting. So the punch presses, the brake press, stuff like that will still stay in Canada. But I mean, that's the advantage we have to having a modularized solution that can come in pieces like that. We can ship it really compact, and wherever we want to assemble it, we can. I mean, it's going to continue to have an effect on ASICs. I mean, it's had it already for a while coming from China, other than some of the ones that could ship out of Singapore. Frankly, I think that's only going to get worse. I like to think the Canada-US thing is going to resolve itself. Our boy Pierre is going to be the next prime minister, and he's going to fix that. But we'll wait and see.
There you go. And I'm a Canadian as well, so I've got some invested interest there. A few more minutes left. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to close out. Maybe we'll start down on the end there, Kenobi, which is his pseudonym. For those of you who don't know, can you wrap this up for us? Ultimately, it sounds like you're more on the decentralized side. Looking forward, where's Bitcoin mining going to be in the next 5-10 years?
Bitcoin mining is definitely going to move, as both Mechanic and myself have explained. It's moving to the decentralized pool version, not the FPPS centralized version of mining. Either with Stratum V2 or with Datum, we ultimately don't care. What we care is about the outcome, not the methods that you use. So yeah, we demand decentralization.
We demand it. Ben,
I just encourage everybody to work with their local governments and local municipalities and state governments to give Bitcoin mining a good rap and a good name in their community. We all have to. Our kids go to school in these communities. We go to church in these communities. We have to be a part of those communities. So noise issues, water issues, grid issues, all that. Take an active role and explain ourselves. Don't hide in the shadows and be under those covers and be so anonymous. So just encourage everybody to reach out to and work through their blockchain councils.
yeah, great point. Bitcoin Mechanic, final thoughts?
Yeah, miners are going to realize that they're paying for an insurance product that is way over the top and not necessary, and that will naturally transition to a pool that will pay out on a transparent basis, which is what Ocean does, and there is no other pool that does that. And I think that will bring about what we need in mining. It will make mining congruent with the rest of the space, which is don't trust, verify as a principle that needs to re-enter the mining space, and people need to understand that means more money in your pocket.
Jolie, final thoughts?
So Bitcoin is definitely coming into the mainstream, as we've all discussed. Decentralization for the smaller players provides a wider ability for people to participate and for public companies to get involved, and also private companies as well. And the more people we get involved, the more legitimized it becomes, and it'll just become part of our ongoing economy.
I think if you're here today and you're thinking about getting into Bitcoin mining, hopefully this panel gives you a good indication that it's not for just the big guys. There's certainly advantages, but whether you're a medium miner thinking about expanding or you're a small miner just getting into it, there's lots of options. I don't think there's any right answer. So if you're sitting there on the fence, you're not too late. Get into it, and also remember Bitcoin's on sale right now.
And I'll echo everyone's on this comment. Look, we're a large scale miner. I don't think centralization is the core kind of ethos of why people are into Bitcoin, into crypto. And so for us, I think there's just larger players, smaller players, all made equally, all who have their own drivers. And I think for us, I actually think of ourselves as decentralized because we're a public company. Anyone can buy our shares and own a piece of it without having to mine if we can deliver those results. And I can't just do whatever I want. Obviously, that's different if you have nation states starting to mine and own large elements, but I'm a fan of decentralization, but in a way that creates a sustainable ecosystem that has real infrastructure to support it. And everyone kind of can get their own exposure to it however they'd like.
There you have it. Decentralized versus centralized mining, the future of Bitcoin mining. Thanks so much to the panel here today. Make sure you come find these guys on the floor. Appreciate it.